You know an episode is going to be good when you have Christian Vikings mocking their pagan counterparts for not slaughtering a priest within a church fast enough.
Too slow, pagan.
Vikings throws us straight into the Battle of Kent. This is the first time we get to see the Greenlanders and Leif actually get their share of action. They all have to learn how to operate effectively in a hectic, crazy atmosphere that these battles create. We saw how overwhelmed they all were, some of them dealing with it with rage and blind swinging, screaming and stabbing, and Leif just kind of carefully monitoring the flow of the battle and working with it to help survive. But of course, the standout of the entire sequence was Harald. A Christian Viking is a duality that doesn't seem like it should exist. When it's time for battle, Harald is allowed to unleash upon his enemies. We see the havoc he can wreak. And this costume is just so perfect with the blood-soaked body, the fresh wolf pout over top. It embodies the inner beast Harald carries inside him. But in truth, I thought his costume design after the battle, when he returned to his refined, well-fitted armor, with a lace and cross almost looking like a cage holding back his blood-soaked Viking spirit. And it's that image that really explains Harald the best. Even Leif could see how hilarious the theological dance Harald plays is. The old Norse traditions evolved alongside the Viking way of life. It's a part of how they live. There doesn't need to be some weird distinction.
And what about love? I love doing it.
So even though this battle was won, they do come across their first hurdle upon discovering the king has already died. The goal for this mission was clear, it's revenge, but not knowing how to fully exact that could destroy the morale of this force. So King Canute decides they need a different trophy, perhaps the head of the new king. So the attack on London is still on, and they decide to go with Olaf's strategy of approaching from the south through the marshland. Whenever we get to see this crew of Greenlanders and Leif and Harald interact, the chemistry is always so good. They're building on these relationships really well, and I'm finding myself more and more invested in their success. Which, this would be not the best moment for that, as they quickly almost get wiped out. This marsh scene was actually done really well by Vikings. It had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. That's not to say that it was ever a good idea to have a bunch of very visible torches in a mostly dark land right by the walls of a major settlement, but it does give us an idea of how Emma's already done a lot to prepare for this Viking invasion. Having a lot of eyes on the marshes, having boats ready with men to take out people approaching, having outposts full of soldiers. They want to goad the Vikings into attacking in that direction because they are ready. We can see how much Harald has begun to like and respect Leif as a warrior, as a friend, and he can start to see why this group of Greenlanders trust and believe in him so much. And it's for that reason he just can't give up on the man, even if all logic says he should be dead. It was interesting to see Valhalla emulating what we saw in the original Viking series with a more spiritual and surreal scene as Leif kind of awakes from his unconsciousness. Religion is often a topic in Vikings, and we've seen in the beginning of this episode how they've poked and prodded at Harald being a Christian and a Viking. But now we might get the first hints that Leif will have his own spiritual journey as he's confronted by Christianity and what that means to him. As much as Harald has worked out his own system of virtues and how he interacts with his religion, Leif will have to do the same as the world evolves and changes. So the dynamic duo kind of sneak into the crowd, mix a bunch of the people, and head into London. When that lady comes up and starts heckling Leif for looking like he's covered in mud and he can't understand or speak anything, and Harald improvises, that was just hilarious. I enjoyed that a lot. But the most important part of this sequence was when they open up the drawbridge and he gets a full, uninterrupted look at the foundations of how this is actually put together. And it does seem from the look in his eye that he's found something unique, something he can exploit.
I am ready! Bring on the Vikings! What are you doing?
Now, if Godwin hadn't already won my heart in episode 2, him brutalizing our bratty prince for about 5 minutes kind of sealed the deal. The main dilemma of the English storyline is on whether they should crown Prince Edmund and have him try fight this Viking force, or whether they should lean more heavily on Mercia, risking the potential upset it has by empowering him, giving him glory, and leaving Edmund untested and looking cowardly. In the previous episode, Edmund was very unsure of himself. He had never really expected to be in this position, he didn't know if he could step up to the role, but with the encouragement of Godwin, he has his voice now. Whether that voice has any good ideas or not is a different question though. Interesting enough, it did seem that Godwyn and Emma were kind of on the same page for how they should approach this at the beginning of this episode. As they're both advisors with lots of experience in the English court, they feel quite confident dealing with this Mercian upstart if he tries to claim the throne. So it seems that Emma and him are both a united front on convincing Edmund to take the safer route. This leads to the scene where Godwyn meets him in the training yard, sees him toying with his guards and thinking he's so good at fighting, and just being as obnoxious as you could possibly think. Like, in this scene, I remember thinking that I want Tyrion to walk out and bitch slap him a couple times, and then Godwyn's like, hold my beer. It wasn't just fun for the viewers to see his bubble burst and get beaten up by this guy, but obviously an integral learning moment for him to know he's beatable. And ordinarily, this could have worked to help bolster Emma and Godwyn's point of view. Take him down a peg, make him understand the risks appropriately, but Godwyn's motivations and interests don't purely lie with what's best for the prince. He knows he needs to gain more power, he needs to reclaim the position his house once had, and he needs some support to get there. So rather than deter the prince from the more dangerous path, he just convinces him he needs him at his side.
You have saddled yourself to an impulsive child.
I disagree. I have saddled myself to the future King of England.
So as this big battle in London gets closer and closer, over in Sweden and Scandinavia, Freydis has a different set of challenges to face on her own. Freydis was sent to Uppsala to have a spiritual journey to reconnect with her pagan roots, but it gets rudely interrupted when they're attacked by this random Christian Viking. She quickly learns there's a group of hunters that target pagans that dislike them being a part of this land, and they seem to be centralized around a mysterious figure we're yet to get introduced to, Jarl Kore. As fun as it was to watch this interesting fight, and it was pretty high tense, and we got to see Freydis pull off some pretty cool moves, I mainly enjoy her storyline for exploring the world, the slower paced meeting of people, just kind of sitting in a healer's hut and cradling a child, wandering through the different villages and wonderful places that the Scandinavian world has. It's strange how Freydis almost gives me a nostalgia for a time that I never existed in. As a viewer, I would never be invested in the outcome of some great cultural change between Christian or pagan if I didn't know what these communities were like, if I didn't meet the people, if I wasn't a part of the world, and that's what this achieves. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on the storyline and see how this feisty Scandinavian girl finds more creative ways to kill Christians. Pretty decent episode all round, and I'd give it a fairly good rating, maybe 2 battle axes and a chicken. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below.